Hello, welcome to the Alberta Craft Council's YouTube videos, Talking with Artists. This is a spotlight with Laura Olive. Laura's spotlight is called Gender Fucked, and it is all color and all jazz all the time. So hello, Laura, welcome. We're going to start with really simple things like you're currently doing a MAD T, which is media, art, and technology?
Media
degree?
arts would be, the full
Media
title
arts?
of it. Yeah,
Okay.
and then a minor in object design as well.
So obviously I don't know all that much about it. So can you tell us what kind of degree that is? What are the things that you're looking at school?
Yeah, I think it's like one of the weirdest degrees that they have. So the idea of it is that you're working with technology in a fine art setting. So you're working with things like projection mapping and audio and coding and electronics, just anything that's like new technology mixed with artwork. Yeah.
You have taken that to the craft realm, which brings us to your exhibition here. Do you want to talk about how you use that new media in some of your processes?
Yeah, so in this work, I'm not using a ton of that. I've been doing a lot more fiber in my work recently, which is where a lot of this work's coming from. But with the earrings specifically, that they are 3D printed. So that's a really fun process that I've been really enjoying because there's so many different things you can do with it. And it's really interesting to look at these processes and the ways that we can automate them in ways that are still ethical.
So you're doing it on a computer, making a plan, and then executing it through a 3D printer.
Yeah, essentially I make a 3D model and then I send that to a program that turns that into code that gets sent to my printer, and then the printer prints it out for me. I take it off the printer and do a little bit of finishing, and it's all good to go.
And you're doing that at Alberta University of the Arts?
Yes.
And you're in your fourth year?
Yes. Well, technically I'm going to be going into like my 6th year. I'm in my 5th right now, kind of. I'm taking a little break from it, but just slowly getting through that degree.
I think that's common, especially during the COVID times, that people have spread it out, and it's nice to have access, I imagine, even to that 3D printer and other technologies. So let's talk a bit about this actual exhibition. So you have a lot of textile work and a lot of crocheting. So where does the crochet come from?
Oh, I learned how to crochet over the pandemic, and it became my new favorite thing in the world. It is just such a lovely hobby to have, and such a wonderful thing to bring into an art practice. I got so excited about it because there's so much you can do with it. I feel like with something like knitting, you have to kind of stay in squares and you're really limited by what you can do with it. And I really liked that with crochet, you can kind of just go in every direction with it all the time. So in this work, there's a lot of different versions of crochet that I'm doing. There's a lot of granny squares and granny stitches. And then there's things like handmade laces and those kinds of things. And even just simple crochet with different materials, like you can see with my paracord pieces and things.
So crochet traditionally is thought of as something like maybe your grandmother would have taught you. So you self-taught yourself. So do you feel like crochet is maybe an act of resistance?
Yeah, totally. It has this history of being kind of seen as this feminine craft, which I think gives it this impression of not being important and not being appreciated necessarily in a fine art setting. So to me, it's kind of resistant and exciting to bring it into that setting. And also to take something that is so feminine and bring it into a body of work that's literally about messing with gender roles and being this thing doesn't have to be connected to a certain gender. So it's been really fun to kind of take those techniques and put them into things that are a little bit more masculine.
So I'm going to pick up my favorite piece, might be your favorite piece as well. So the man purse that you've made, you've got it heavy, but you also have these really feminine parts. So what makes you want gender of things to be sort of switched around? What are you trying to get people to think when they're looking at something like this?
Yeah, I think it's just looking at the elements of what we are gendering in certain ways and kind of looking at it and being that's so silly though. We've got camouflage on the side, and we've got the ratchet straps, and we've got really heavy materials. And it's these things that you would traditionally think of as masculine, especially when you're looking at an Alberta perspective of masculinity. And it was really fun to take that and kind of be how could I make a purse that's for a man? But also that is just such a silly thing to be doing, to be a purse is a woman thing. Why is it a woman thing? And I guess this is just my weird kind of convoluted rantings that go on in my head all the time, especially as a non-binary person trying to figure out what's going to cause me to be gendered a certain way. There's a lot of conflict that comes up where I'm like, this thing isn't actually feminine. It's not necessarily masculine inherently, but that's the way that it's being perceived. So it's a lot of having those conversations with myself and then trying to have those conversations with other people.
In the case of the purse, yeah, I can totally see that. It's a totally useful object that, men don't carry around, but they've got these pockets full of stuff. So
well, and I liked with this as well that the idea was we were making it completely unusable because it's so heavy.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be about 6'5" to want to carry that around. But
Absolutely.
This is much more delicate. What are you calling this one?
That one is the handy dandy tool purse.
This one makes a very good sound.
It does. I wanted it to be obnoxiously loud. It isn't, I feel like you have to get it at the right angle, but I think you could be walking through the mall and be very annoying with it. if you were like really, anyways.
This would be good though if you showed up and your tools are inside as well.
Exactly. You can fill it up with the tools inside. You've got them on the outside. I feel like you could still use the wrenches, which is kind of fun as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They hold on to their usefulness. Maybe not the one on the handle, but it's pretty covered and stuff.
They're, as objects, they're all so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, really. Did you crocheted?
Yeah.
This lighter thing and then the...
Yeah, both parts of this are
paracord.
crocheted. So it's the paracord is crocheted on the body here. And then I have, a lighter yarn, like just a cotton that I'm using here. And so this is all patterns that I made up for myself as well. I mean, this is just a basic crochet, but with all of the lace, that's all stuff that I kind of figured out specifically for this piece. And then on the handles, you can see it kind of has this traditional paracord style of knotting that you see in a lot of survival bracelets and things. So I kind of just took the most basic one and used that quite a bit. Yeah.
So what do you want people to think when they see this, when they walk up and look at your exhibition? What are you hoping that someone goes away with?
That it's so silly and that gender roles are so silly. And I'm just hoping that people have fun with it. I think that queer joy and trans joy are really important. And so I hope specifically when I have queer and trans people who are interacting with this work, that they get to just laugh a little bit and have a silly time with it and just appreciate it for just its silliness.
So this work that you're making is really hopeful. It's looking especially in Alberta at this time, when things seem not so hopeful or you're getting a lot of not support. When you're showing your work in drag and you're in community, do you feel like you're trying to show a hopefulness for the future with your work?
Yeah, I mean, inherently, I feel like those communities are kind of built on joy. I think queerness in general is kind of built on joy. The whole point of being queer is trying to have a happier existence. And so a place like a drag show for me is just this space of, again, this silliness and this joy and just enjoying being around other queer people, enjoying having an art form that is so just about that, just about being joyful and silly and all of those kinds of things.
Now you've taken it from the drag show into a gallery space, so you're now showing it to all sorts of kind of people. So what kind of message would you like to give out to the general community about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of its relationship to drag, I think that one of the things I get really excited about is just showing people the amount of work that goes into that art and the amount of time that goes into the costuming, but also if you actually go to a show, there's so many elements of that you are putting together to make it be successful. So I'm really excited to be able to take work outside of that space and put it into a gallery setting, especially since I think a lot of that work can kind of be devalued and not really seen as important as other art forms sometimes. So it's really exciting that I get to be able to kind of take it out of there.
To me, it seems like drag is like a fashion show, an improv show, a theatrical, makeup, hair, you're sort of showing many ideas, and costume design.
100%. It really is an art form where you have to do everything yourself. Obviously, there's some people who are able to have other people design their wardrobe or have choreographers who are helping with the process or even have other people do their makeup. But when you're looking at it on a local level, most of those people are doing the majority of those things themselves. And it's really something where what you see on the stage is typically like a huge amount of work on the part of like one person, and maybe that person and their partner, or that person and whoever they're paying to help them.
Like many of these things, they're just so pretty in their execution, and like pins that you can wear to help people remember pronouns, which I think is great because we all need help.
Absolutely.
And then, yeah, to these more wearable objects, these collars are really...
Yeah, and I like designed the lace on these as well, so it's all my own kind of designs going into that, aside from the paracord base,
Yeah.
which is, again, that kind of basic one that you see a lot of the time.
Yeah, I love how you're thinking about putting everything together.
Thank you.
In the future, how do you see Alberta, the practice, how people see gender?
I am really hopeful that we can continue in a direction of really looking at queer artwork in powerful ways and giving people space to create that work. I think we've got some really amazing artists in this province and in this city, and it's just a matter of giving them stages and giving them support and helping build communities where we can see each other thrive. And I'd really like to see more appreciation of like things like alternative drag and those kinds of things, and community support and support like within the folks who are doing that work to just kind of keep it going and keep making wonderful things.
So you've mentioned, we've mentioned drag. You've also said alternative drag. So I'm thinking of the traditional drag in the way that maybe people of my generation saw it. So what are you talking about when you talk about alternative drag?
Yeah, I think that especially these days, there's kind of this divide between what you're seeing on TV in drag and what you're seeing in person in drag. And sometimes there will be some crossover, like obviously people from like Drag Race Tour and those kinds of things happen. But I think there's this expectation that people are spending like ridiculous amounts of money on their costumes, and again have like choreographers who are helping them, or like again, if you look at something like Drag Race, RuPaul doesn't even do her own makeup anymore. And that's kind of the standard of drag that the average person is consuming because that's what's accessible to them. Whereas when you're starting to get into the actual drag community, there are people who are doing similar kinds of drag, but there's also this really great subculture of drag that comes up with a lot of kings, a lot of monarchs, drag creatures, things, the whole variation, and some queens as well. And the idea is that it's not as based on these standards that something like Drag Race is putting forward, and more based on standards of what we find interesting, what our community wants to interact with, those kinds of things.
So your spotlight will be here until the end of March in the Calgary Gallery, but you've also been accepted into the Emerging Artist Show, which will be in Edmonton and in Calgary later this year. So congratulations on that. I can't wait to see what's going in there. Thank you for coming in today and talking with us and sharing the joy and the color and the excitement that is the future.
Thanks so much for having me.
Anytime.